Iran, home to 2,900 years of dynasty, once amongst America's greatest allies, now often seen as its greatest threat. But how did destiny take such a sharp turn? And who was responsible? 1925. Reza Shah Pahlavi, founder of the Pahlavi dynasty, takes power.
The truth is, 50 years ago, the Shah's father, who was an officer there, wanted to overthrow the Qajar emperor to establish a republic.
I will be the Iranian Ataturk. I'll modernize this country and I'll create a republic.
But the British got wind of his plans, and one day...
Hello. Are you positive you want to establish a republic? Wouldn't you much rather become emperor? Me? Emperor? Why, of course. Emperor's better than president, and an emperor has absolute power. Anyway, a great country such as yours needs a strong man, a man like yourself, at its head. Well, that is a good point. What's more, we both know full well that the clergy is against the republic. And, with good reason, I may add. What would I have to do? Nothing. Just give us the oil, and we shall take care of the rest.
The US and Britain are strong proponents of his reign, until they are not. In fear of Pahlavi cooperating with Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union and England occupy Iran and send him into exile, placing his youthful and easily influenced son in charge. Ever since the beginning of the Pahlavi dynasty, Iranian oil reserves were dominated by the Anglo-American Oil Company, or what we know today as BP Oil.
Gasoline is the fuel that powers this modern age. On the highway, on the farm, and in the air.
In 1953, when the newly elected Prime Minister Mossadegh aims to nationalize oil reserves, keeping wealth inside the nation, he gains widespread popularity. The Shah, however, quickly tries to dismiss him, but his plan backfires as he is forced out of the country by Mossadegh's supporters. The Shah's exile doesn't last long, however. Operation Ajax. With the help of covert U.S. assistance, Pahlavi is restored back into power, much to the dismay of the majority of the population. The Shah was clearly seen as a Western puppet by his own people, as he served the elite and created a huge wage gap. Living in opulence and throwing $100 million parties as many of his own people were squabbling in extreme poverty, widespread tension began to grow. The Shah's autocratic rule, unequal distribution of oil wealth, and forced westernization led to widespread dissent. Not to mention the SAVAK, a terrifying intelligence agency trained by CIA and Israeli Mossad, committed to the imprisonment and torture of anyone in opposition to the Shah. These conditions created not only anti-Shah sentiments, but also anti-Western animosity. With a population of 99% Shia Muslim, the Shah's Western policies and seeming erasure of Islam from society infuriated the population. And at the head of this angry population was Ayatollah Khomeini. Ruhollah Khomeini, whose given name literally means inspired by God, was born in a small Iranian village on September 24, 1902. Beginning from the time he was a teenager, Khomeini was a passionate poet, publishing works in 3 collections in mystical, political, and social poetry. Khomeini published books on scientific Islamic theology and doctrines. He also studied in Qom, eventually authoring over 40 books. Khomeini's descent towards the Shah began as a young scholar and revolutionary. During the 50s, Khomeini was muted by senior religious officials and discouraged from criticizing the Shah, as he silenced protests that were pleading for a democratic reform. However, in 1963, after becoming a marja, Khomeini took an active and vocal stance against the Shah. In June of 1963, Khomeini made a bold move. I will tell you a story that will be familiar to those aged 30 or 40 years or more. 3 foreign countries once attacked and then occupied Iran: the Soviet Union, Britain, and America. The property of the people was exposed to danger, and their honor was imperiled. But God knows how happy people were when they saw that Pahlavi had gone. In October of 1964, Khomeini continued to speak out against the Shah in the U.S. and was exiled for 14 years, beginning in Turkey, then spending 13 years in Iraq. During his time in exile, Khomeini continued to preach revolution, creating pamphlets and cassettes and writing books that were then smuggled into bazaars. He did not only prepare a revolution. Whilst in exile, Khomeini prepared his blueprint for an Islamic government. During his last months of exile, Khomeini was forced into Paris as protests began to heat up, and the Shah hoped sending him further away might ease tensions. The Shah was wrong. Khomeini was followed by a constant stream of reporters eager to hear from the voice of the revolution. The Shah was forced to flee the country, and with his departure came Khomeini's return. After 14 years away from being home, when asked about how he felt being in Iran, Khomeini replied, "I feel nothing," speaking into existence one of the most controversial statements, with interpretations and criticisms ranging from his extreme disconnect with the material world to his unfeeling and cold incapability of understanding the Iranian people. Khomeini instated a system of waliyatul fiqh, in which a spiritual leader ruled alongside a prime minister. The Islamic government was clearly defined by Khomeini.
اینطور عاشقانه رأی داده باشند به یه مطلبی، هم جمهوری اسلامیش را اونطور عاشقانه رأی دادن و اونطور اکثریت در زمان شاه سابق که یادتون از شما اینها یه رفراندومی می‌خواستن بکنن. من از قم فرستادم ببینم که بعضی چی میگه. اینا آمدن گفتن بیش از 2000 تا نمیتونن تهیه کنن. معجاله گفتن همه ملت برای اینکه 6 میلیون رأی گفتن 6 میلیون رأی دروغ میگفتن. 6 میلیون رأی دروغی را اونها میگفتن همه ملت. حالا ما یه جا 20 میلیون رأی داشتیم، یه جا هم که دستیم.
However, Khomeini's fervent support began to split as he grew controversial. Promises of non-interfering clergy and free bus, free heat, and free oil services went unkept, as the Republic instead established strict dress codes and banned most Western films and non-religious music, as well as alcohol. As a result of Khomeini's revolution, Iran is now considered a strong regional power, with striking developments despite economic sanctions and an 8-year war with Iraq. The revolution caused the middle class to undergo dramatic expansion, largely due to the redistribution of oil wealth, as well as societal improvements such as progressive family planning and an expansion of higher learning. 2 decades after the Islamic Revolution, in 1998, Iran was named in the top 10 countries across the world that had managed to close the gender gap in education. Economically, Iran has also improved, paying off its debts to American banks within just 2 years of the Islamic Revolution. On the other hand, diplomatically, Iran has suffered, with the US and Western allies isolating it diplomatically and economically. However, this encouraged Iran's business relations with powers such as China and Russia. Whether it was for the better or for the worse, Khomeini changed the world. Iran would be in a dramatically different condition if it were not for him. He rallied a nation from miles past its borders and toppled a government without even setting foot on its soil for over a decade. Was Khomeini a power-hungry ruler who set Iran decades backwards, or a spiritual leader void of ego striving for balance and faith in society?